The string quartet played our song, the same melody that had accompanied my walk down the aisle 15 years earlier. 15 years of building a life together, of weathering storms and celebrating triumphs, of creating a family and a home that felt like a sanctuary from the world's chaos. 15 years that had led us back to this moment, standing before our closest friends and family, ready to affirm the vows we'd made when we were younger, more naive, and perhaps less aware of what, for better or worse, truly meant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I looked up at David, his salt and pepper hair catching the golden light of the sunset streaming through the windows of our backyard tent. The years had been kind to him, deepening the laugh lines around his eyes, adding a distinguished touch of gray to his temples. At 45, he was more handsome to me than he'd been at 30, when we'd first said, "I do." There was something about the confidence he'd grown into, the quiet assurance of a man who knew his place in the world. "You look beautiful, Elise," he whispered, his voice catching slightly, those familiar hazel eyes holding mine with the same intensity that had first drawn me to him at a mutual friend's dinner party all those years ago. I smoothed the silk of my cream-colored dress, specially chosen for this day. Not a wedding gown. I'd had my fill of tulle and tiaras the first time around, but something elegant that made me feel like the best version of myself. At 43, I wasn't the same bride I'd been at 28. Life had shaped me. Motherhood had transformed me, and the challenges we'd faced together had forged me into someone stronger, more patient, more appreciative of the quiet moments. "Are you ready for another 15 years?" I asked, a small smile playing at my lips. "And 15 more after that," he replied, squeezing my hand as our officiant, my brother Michael, called for everyone's attention. The 50 guests, seated in white chairs beneath the billowing white tent in our backyard, quieted their conversations. These weren't just witnesses to a ceremony. They were the people who had shaped our journey, family members who had supported us through the early struggles of David's startup business and my demanding career as a pediatric nurse. Friends who had brought meals when each of our children was born and who had shown up with wine and understanding during the rough patches. Colleagues who had become confidants, neighbors who had become like family. Our children sat in the front row, Emma, 14, rolling her eyes good-naturedly at her father's overt display of affection, and Noah, 11, fidgeting with his tie but beaming with pride. They had been the ones to suggest this vow renewal in the first place, curious about the wedding they were too young to remember, eager to see their parents celebrate their love in a way they could participate in and remember. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Friends and family," Michael began, his voice carrying across the gathering. "We're here today to celebrate not just love in its exciting early bloom, but love that has deepened its roots, weathered storms, and continued to grow stronger through 15 years of marriage." I felt David's hand tighten around mine, and when I glanced up at him, the emotion in his eyes made my own tears threaten. We had come through so much together, the early financial struggles as David built his consulting firm from the ground, up the heartbreaking miscarriage between Emma and Noah, the year my mother battled cancer, and David had stepped up to support all of us. His own health scare 3 years ago that had forced us to reevaluate our priorities. Marriage, Michael continued, is not a state of permanent bliss. It's a journey of continuous choice, choosing each other, day after day, through circumstances both wonderful and difficult. Today, David and Elise stand before us to renew their commitment to that choice. As Michael spoke, I let my gaze wander over the gathering. My best friend Vanessa sat with her husband Mark, who had been David's best man at our wedding. They had been with us through it all, our friendship spanning decades. David's parents, now in their 70s, held hands just as they had at our wedding, modeling the lasting love we aspired to. My father sat alone, the empty chair beside him a poignant reminder of my mother's absence, but his smile was genuine as he caught my eye. In the back row, I noticed Samantha, David's executive assistant, dabbing at her eyes. She had joined his firm 5 years ago and had quickly become indispensable, her efficiency and dedication helping David scale the business to new heights. Beside her sat her husband James, talking quietly with Craig, David's business partner since the beginning. The ceremony progressed with the same readings we had chosen for our wedding, now layered with the patina of lived experience. When it came time to exchange our renewed vows, David went first, his voice steady as he promised to continue loving me through whatever the next 15 years might bring. "Elise," he said, holding both my hands now, "when I married you 15 years ago, I thought I knew what love was. I had no idea how much deeper it could grow, how much stronger it could become. You've been my partner in every sense of the word, challenging me when I needed challenging, supporting me when I needed support, loving me even when I wasn't very lovable." A soft chuckle rippled through the gathering, knowing nods exchanged, among those who understood the reality behind the romance. Today, I recommit myself to our journey. I promise to keep choosing you, to keep growing with you, to keep building this beautiful life we've created together. I promise to be present, not just physically, but emotionally. I promise to listen not just with my ears, but with my heart. I promise to remember that our love is both a shelter from life's storms and an adventure to be lived boldly. Tears were flowing freely down my cheeks now, and I could see Emma in my peripheral vision, no longer playing it cool but openly wiping her eyes. "I love you more today than I did 15 years ago," David concluded. "And I know I'll love you even more 15 years from now." As I began my own vows, my voice trembled with emotion. "David, when we stood together at the altar 15 years ago, we made promises based on hope and faith. Today we make these promises again, but now they're grounded in experience and knowledge. I know now what it means to love someone through sickness and health, through better and worse, through richer and poorer, because we've lived all of it together." I paused, gathering myself, aware of the weight of the moment. "I promise to continue growing with you, to embrace the changes that time brings to both of us, to remember that while the people we were fell in love, it's the people we've become, and the people we're still becoming who choose to stay in love." David's eyes never left mine, and in them I could see the reflection of our shared history, the laughter, the tears, the quiet moments that had cemented our bond. "I promise to keep choosing you every day, through whatever joys and challenges life brings our way. I promise to nurture not just our love, but our friendship, which has always been the foundation of our relationship. I promise to continue building our legacy together, not just through our children, but through the way we live our values and create meaning in the world." The setting sun cast a golden glow over the gathering as I finished. 15 years ago, I gave you my heart without reservation. Today, I give it to you again, fuller and stronger for having been loved by you. Michael guided us through the exchange of new rings, simple platinum bands engraved with the date of our renewal and the words, "Choose love," a phrase that had become our mantra through difficult times. "By the power vested in me," Michael concluded, his own voice thick with emotion, "I now pronounce you still husband and wife. David, you may kiss your bride, again." David cupped my face with gentle hands and kissed me tenderly as our guests erupted in applause and cheers. Emma and Noah rushed forward to embrace us, turning the moment into a family hug that felt like the perfect symbolism of what our marriage had created. As we turned to face our guests, now officially renewed in our commitment, the air buzzed with joy and celebration. The string quartet transitioned to more lively music, and waitstaff appeared with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, signaling the start of the reception. You did good, sis, Michael whispered as he hugged me tightly. Mom would have been so proud. His words unlocked a fresh wave of emotion, and I nodded against his shoulder, unable to speak. My mother had been gone for 3 years, but her absence was keenly felt on days like this. She had always been our biggest cheerleader, the one who reminded us to work through the hard times when divorce might have seemed like an easier option during those rough early years of marriage. She's here in spirit, David said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. His uncanny ability to read my thoughts one of the many reasons I loved him. The reception flowed into full swing, with fairy lights twinkling overhead as dusk deepened into evening. The tent glowed like a lantern in our backyard, filled with laughter and conversation, the clinking of glasses and the warmth of celebration. After dinner was served and enjoyed, Mark stood to offer a toast, just as he had at our wedding. To David and Elise, he said, raising his glass, who have shown all of us what it means to grow together rather than grow apart. Your commitment to each other and to your family has been an inspiration. Here's to 15 years of memories made, and many more to come. Glasses clinked and cheers echoed as David stood to respond. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. Each of you has played a role in our story, and we're grateful for your love and support. Especially, he looked down at Emma and Noah, who beamed up at him. To our children, who remind us every day what really matters in life. The evening progressed with dancing, more toasts, and the comfortable mingling of people who held pieces of our history. I was making my way back from chatting with David's parents when I noticed him in deep conversation with Craig near the bar setup. Their body language caught my attention. Craig gesturing intensely, David's shoulders tense, his expression serious. Business never fully stopped for them, even on days like today. As I approached, their conversation halted abruptly, replaced with easy smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Everything okay? I asked, slipping my arm through David's. Of course, he replied, dropping a kiss on my temple. Craig was just sharing some thoughts on the Reynolds account. No business talk tonight, I scolded lightly. That was our agreement. Craig raised his hands in surrender. My fault entirely. I promised myself I wouldn't bring it up, but you know how I get when I'm onto something. And you know how I get when people break promises. I countered with a pointed look at David, though my tone remained light. Especially today of all days. You're absolutely right, David conceded. No more business talk. He checked his watch, an anniversary gift I'd given him years ago. It's almost time for the cake anyway. As if on cue, Vanessa approached, camera in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but Emma's looking for both of you. Something about a surprise before cake? David and I exchanged curious glances. Our daughter had mentioned wanting to do something special for the renewal, but had been secretive about the details. We followed Vanessa back to the center of the tent, where Emma stood with Noah beside a small table that hadn't been there before. On it sat what looked like a handmade scrapbook. Mom, Dad, Emma began, her teenage confidence momentarily replaced with nervous energy. Noah and I wanted to give you something special today. We've been working on it for months. Noah nodded eagerly. It's a memory book of your whole love story. Emma opened the scrapbook to reveal pages carefully decorated with photographs, ticket stubs, and handwritten notes. We interviewed everyone, Grandpa, Uncle Michael, Aunt Vanessa, all your friends, about their memories of you guys, from how you met all the way to today. I gasped softly as I took in the first page, a photo of David and me at that fateful dinner party where we'd met, looking so young and unaware of how our lives were about to change. How did you even find this picture? Aunt Vanessa had it, Noah explained proudly. And Grandpa gave us a bunch of old ones from your wedding. As Emma turned the pages, our history unfolded. Courtship, engagement, wedding, the early years of marriage, the births of both children, family vacations, ordinary moments made extraordinary through the lens of time and love. Each page featured not just photos, but reflections from our loved ones, memories and impressions that formed a tapestry of our shared life. This is... David's voice cracked with emotion. This is incredible. I can't believe you did all this. I was too overwhelmed to speak, pulling both children into a fierce hug. Over their heads, I met David's gaze, saw the same wonder reflected there. Our children had given us the most precious gift, our own history, seen through the eyes of those who loved us. Guests gathered around to admire the scrapbook, exclaiming over memories captured and moments remembered. The atmosphere in the tent grew somehow even warmer, suffused with nostalgia and joy. As we prepared to cut the cake, a simple two-tier creation decorated with the same flowers that had adorned our wedding cake, David reached for his phone to check the time, but it wasn't in his pocket. I must have left it at the bar, he murmured. I'll be right back. He returned moments later, just as the photographer was positioning us behind the cake. As we stood together, arms around each other, my hand resting lightly on Emma's shoulder, Noah pressing close to David's side, I was struck by a sense of absolute rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, these people, this love, was the foundation that would sustain us. The cake was cut, slices distributed, and the celebration continued. I was chatting with my college roommate when I noticed David checking his phone, his expression changing subtly before he quickly pocketed it again. A small frown creased his brow, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Everything okay? I asked when she stepped away to refresh her drink. Fine, he replied, smiling easily. Just a missed call from my mother, but I'll call her tomorrow. She's probably just calling to say how beautiful everything was. I nodded, though something in his response felt off. David's mother had been sitting not 20 feet away all evening. Why would she be calling him? But before I could pursue the thought, Vanessa was pulling me away to take photos with our old friend group, and the moment slipped away. The party continued well into the night, the mixture of reminiscence and celebration creating a magical atmosphere. As the hour grew late, guests began to depart, offering final congratulations and warm embraces. Emma and Noah, despite their protests, were clearly fading fast, and we arranged for them to spend the night at my father's house, another gift, giving David and me the chance to enjoy our renewed vows in private. As the last guest left and the catering staff finished packing up, David and I stood in our backyard, the tent now empty but still aglow with fairy lights. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned back against his chest, savoring the moment. Tonight was perfect, I murmured, tilting my head back to look up at the stars visible beyond the tent's canopy. You're perfect, he replied, pressing a kiss to my neck. Thank you for 15 amazing years, and for still choosing me, every day. I turned in his arms to face him. Always, I promised, rising on tiptoes to kiss him properly. As we began walking back toward the house, David's phone, which he'd placed on a nearby table, lit up with an incoming text, the illuminated screen bright in the dimness of the now empty tent. I wouldn't have noticed, wouldn't have given it a second thought except for the words that flashed clearly on the screen. Miss you already, baby. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next week. My steps faltered, my body freezing involuntarily as the words registered. David, still walking, didn't notice for a second that I'd stopped. When he did, he turned, a question in his eyes that quickly transformed to alarm as he followed my stunned gaze to his phone. For one eternal moment, neither of us moved or spoke. The magical evening, the renewed vows, the celebration of 15 years, all of it seemed to hang suspended in the air between us, suddenly fragile, like a soap bubble about to burst. Elise, David started, his voice strained. I can explain. 5 words that have preceded countless confessions, countless betrayals. My throat constricted, making it hard to breathe, let alone speak. The perfect evening, the life we'd just celebrated, was any of it real? As I stood there, staring at the man I'd just promised to love for another 15 years, another lifetime, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, reality splintering like glass. Because in that single, heart-stopping moment, I realized that the life I thought we'd built together might be nothing more than an elaborate illusion. And as David reached for his phone, his movements too quick, too desperate, I wondered what else he'd been hiding. What other secrets lurked behind the facade of our supposedly perfect marriage? The vows we'd renewed just hours ago echoed mockingly in my mind as I stood frozen, watching my husband's face drain of color, his eyes darting between me and the damning message still glowing on his screen. Our vow renewal day had ended with a revelation I never could have anticipated, and a question I was suddenly afraid to know the answer to. Who was the real David, and what else had he been hiding from me during our 15 years of marriage? "Give me that," I said, my voice unrecognizable even to my own ears, flat, cold, devoid of the warmth that had suffused it throughout our renewal ceremony. David's hand closed around his phone, his knuckles whitening. "Elise, please, give me the phone." Each word dropped like a stone between us. For a fraction of a second, I saw calculation in his eyes. The look I'd seen countless times when he was running scenarios, assessing risks in business meetings. My stomach clenched. Then, with visible reluctance, he handed me the device. The message was still displayed on the screen, the words burning into my vision. "Miss you already, baby. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next week." The sender was listed simply as SW, no name, just initials. My mind raced, cataloging every S in our acquaintance. Samantha Williams, his executive assistant. Sarah Wilson, the marketing consultant for his firm. Stephanie Wu, the new client he'd mentioned several times lately. "Who is SW?" I asked, still in that detached voice that seemed to be coming from somewhere outside my body. David ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times over 15 years of marriage. "It's not what you think." "What I think," I said slowly, "is that while we were renewing our vows, promising to spend another 15 years together, someone was texting you about how amazing last night was. What I think is that the words 'miss you already, baby' are not words a business associate sends to their married colleague." My voice was rising now, the numbness giving way to a white-hot anger that threatened to consume me. "What I think is that you'd better start explaining, right now, before I— Elise!" He stepped toward me, hands outstretched, pleading. "It's complicated." I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us. "Uncomplicate it." He glanced around the tent, as if suddenly remembering we were still in our backyard, the remnants of our celebration surrounding us. "Can we at least go inside, please?" Part of me wanted to refuse, to demand answers right there amid the wilting flowers and half-empty champagne glasses. But another part, the practical nurse who had spent decades staying calm in crises, recognized the wisdom in privacy. The catering staff was still packing up at the far end of the yard. This wasn't a conversation for witnesses. Without responding, I turned and walked stiffly toward the house, aware of David following a few steps behind. The warmth of the evening seemed to have evaporated, leaving a chill that penetrated deeper than skin. Inside our home, the home we'd built together, filled with photographs of our family, evidence of our shared life, I turned to face him in the kitchen, arms crossed protectively over my chest. The beautiful dress I'd chosen to renew my vows in now felt like a costume, a prop in some elaborate charade. "Talk," I commanded, leaning against the kitchen island for support. David set his phone face down on the counter and exhaled heavily. "The text is from Sophia Wallace." The name meant nothing to me. "And who is Sophia Wallace?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. She's a client. Sort of. A client who calls you baby? I arched an eyebrow, disbelief evident in every line of my body. No. Yes. It's not. He scrubbed his hands over his face. She's Craig's client, technically, but she's involved in a project I've been consulting on. And what kind of consulting involves spending the night with her? My voice trembled slightly, the anger giving way momentarily to the hurt beginning to bloom beneath it. I didn't spend the night with her, Elise. Not the way you're thinking. Then what way did you spend the night with her, David? Please, enlighten me. The sarcasm was sharp enough to cut. He paced the kitchen, his movements agitated. The Reynolds account, the one Craig and I were discussing earlier, it's been in trouble. Craig brought Sophia in as a potential investor. We've been courting her firm for weeks. Courting. The word hung between us, laden with implication. Poor choice of words, he amended quickly. We've been trying to secure her investment. Her firm has the capital we need to save the account. And this required an overnight stay. Where, exactly? At her lake house, David admitted. But it wasn't just me. Craig was there too, and her business partners. It was a strategy session that ran late, so we all stayed over. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with the message I'd seen. That doesn't explain why she's calling you baby, or saying last night was amazing. David's expression shifted, a flash of something, guilt, fear, crossing his features. Sophia is forward, flirtatious. She's like that with everyone. Everyone? I echoed skeptically. Craig warned me about her, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Said she tests boundaries, likes to mix business and pleasure. But the account is too important, Elise. We couldn't afford to lose her interest. So, you what? Played along with her flirtation? The implications were making me nauseated. No! His denial was vehement. I've kept everything strictly professional. The amazing part she's referring to. We had a breakthrough on the project structure. We worked until 3 a.m. hammering out details. It was exhausting, but productive. My mind flashed to the conversation I'd witnessed earlier between David and Craig. The intensity, the abrupt shift when I approached. And Craig was there the entire time? During this late-night breakthrough? David hesitated just a fraction too long. Yes, well, mostly. He stepped out for a few calls. Calls. At 3 a.m. International clients, he explained quickly. The time? Difference. David. I cut him off, my patience evaporating. Do you really expect me to believe that this woman is calling you baby and talking about amazing nights because of a business meeting? Do you think I'm stupid? Of course not, he protested. But it's the truth, Elise. Nothing happened between us. She's just like that. Pushes boundaries. Makes everything sound suggestive. Show me the rest of the conversation, I demanded. What? The text thread. Show me your previous exchanges with Sophia Wallace. His expression closed off. That's private, Elise. It's business communications. Private, I repeated flatly. On the day we renewed our vows, you're getting texts from a woman calling you baby, and you're claiming privacy? It's not like that, he insisted. There are confidentiality issues. Client information. I laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. Convenient. I'm telling you the truth, he said, an edge of desperation entering his voice. Ask Craig. He'll confirm everything. Oh, I plan to, I assured him. But right now, I want to see those texts. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the space between us feeling like a chasm. This man whom I'd thought I knew completely, whose heart I believed was aligned with mine, suddenly seemed like a stranger. The warm, intimate connection we'd shared just hours ago during our vows had vanished, replaced by suspicion and distance. If there's nothing inappropriate going on, I said finally, deliberately keeping my voice even. Then there should be no problem showing me the messages. David's jaw clenched. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with obvious reluctance, he reached for his phone. Fine, he said, unlocking it and opening his messages. He hesitated one last time before handing it to me. But you need to understand the context. I took the phone, my hand steady despite the storm raging inside me. The message thread with SW appeared on the screen. I scrolled up, reading backward through their exchanges, my heart pounding painfully against my ribs. The messages were a mix of business and personal, weaving together in a way that blurred the lines between professional and something else entirely. There were discussions of the project, financial details, meeting arrangements, but interspersed were comments from Sophia that were undeniably flirtatious. Can't wait to see that handsome face tomorrow. Dreaming of our next strategy session? Already. You make boring business exciting, David. It's your superpower. David's responses were more restrained, but he hadn't shut down the flirtation either. He'd responded with smiley faces, with looking forward to it too, with you make work a pleasure, Sophia. Then I reached the exchanges from the previous day, the day before our vow renewal. Sophia, Lake House is all set for tonight. Bringing the good champagne. Don't tell Craig, but you're the real reason I'm considering this investment. David. Flatterer, but I'll take it. See you at 7. Sophia. Wear that blue shirt, the one that matches your eyes. David. Just for you. My hands began to shake, the phone nearly slipping from my grasp. The timestamp on these messages showed they'd been exchanged yesterday morning, while I had been getting my hair done for our vow renewal. While I had been writing my heartfelt vows, David had been planning a rendezvous with another woman. Elise, David said, reaching for the phone. It's not what it looks like? I finished for him, my voice barely audible. Because what it looks like, David, is that the night before our vow renewal, you were at some lake house with a woman who isn't your wife, drinking champagne and wearing your blue shirt, just for her. The blue shirt is just a shirt, he protested. It's my standard business attire, and the champagne was for all of us, the whole team. The whole team, I repeated, including Craig, who was conveniently taking calls at 3 a.m. Yes, David insisted. This is being twisted into something it's not. I continued scrolling, my heart sinking further with each message, until I reached one that made my blood run cold. Sophia. Last chance to back out of tomorrow. Say the word and we'll be on a plane to the Maldives instead. David. Tempting. Very tempting. Sophia. I'm serious. Just say yes and I'll make all the arrangements. No one would even know until Monday. David's response had been a single word. Rain check? Not no. Not, I'm renewing vows with my wife tomorrow. Not, this is inappropriate. Just, rain check? Leaving. The door opened for future possibilities. I looked up from the phone to find David watching me, his expression a mix of apprehension and defiance. A rain check, I said flatly. That's your response to her suggestion that you skip our vow renewal and run off with her? She wasn't serious, he countered. It was just banter. Banter. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. On the day before we renewed our vows, you were bantering with another woman about running off together instead. It didn't mean anything, David insisted. It's just how she communicates. I was playing along to keep her interested in the project. The project? I echoed. And is the project worth more than our marriage, David? Is it worth more than the vows we just renewed in front of our children? He flinched at the mention of Emma and Noah. Of course not. Nothing is worth more than our family. But this, it's not what you're making it out to be. Nothing physical happened between us. But you wanted it to. The realization hit me with stunning clarity. That's what rain check means, isn't it? Not now, but maybe later. No, he denied, but the protest sounded weak even to my ears. I was just keeping the conversation open, for the sake of the account. The account, I repeated. Always the account. Always business. Always some excuse. I set the phone down on the counter, suddenly unable to bear holding it any longer. The weight of what I'd discovered was crushing, pressing down on my chest until it was hard to breathe. How long? Has this been going on? I asked. There is no this, David insisted. Sophia came into the picture about 2 months ago when Craig brought her firm in as potential investors. All of our interactions have been strictly business-related. With a side of flirtation, I amended bitterly. With champagne and lake house, overnight stays and discussions of running off to the Maldives together. It's not like that, he repeated, but the denial was beginning to sound hollow. Then what is it like, David? Explain it to me. Help me understand how my husband, on the eve of our vow renewal, could be exchanging messages like these with another woman. He opened his mouth, closed it again. For the first time in our relationship, David, always articulate, always ready, with an explanation, seemed at a loss for words. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths and accusations. Outside, I could hear the last of the catering staff departing, car doors closing, engines starting. The remnants of our celebration were being cleared away, just as the illusion of our perfect marriage was being dismantled. Is there more? I asked finally. Other women? Other clients you've been bantering with? No, he said quickly. Absolutely not. Sophia is... She's the only one who's ever been this forward, and I've never... acted on it? I finished for him. Is that the line, David? As long as you didn't physically cheat, everything else is acceptable? He ran his hands through his hair again, frustration evident in every line of his body. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to explain that this has been blown out of proportion. These messages, they're taken out of context. What context would make "miss you already, baby" appropriate? I demanded. What context justifies rain check instead of "no, I'm married"? Business, he repeated, but the word sounded weak even, to my ears. The Reynolds account means everything to the firm right now, Elise. If we lose it, we could lose the entire company. People's jobs are at stake, not just mine, but dozens of employees who depend on us. So you're the sacrificial lamb? My voice dripped with sarcasm. Noble David, flirting with the investor to save the company. He flinched. When you put it like that... How else should I put it? I interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were willing to risk our marriage, to disrespect our vows, the very vows we renewed today, all for the sake of business. It wasn't a risk, he insisted. I had it under control. It was just harmless flirtation to keep her engaged with the project. Harmless, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Tell me, David, would you find it harmless if I were exchanging messages like these with a male colleague? If I were spending the night at his lake house, drinking his champagne, wearing clothes he specifically requested? His expression darkened. That's different. How? How is it different? Because... He stopped, seemingly aware of the trap. Because you're a man and I'm a woman? I pressed. Because it's business when you do it, but would be betrayal if I did the same? No, he protested, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. It's not a double standard. It's just, this situation is unique. I'm sure it is, I said coldly. I'm sure every man who's ever betrayed his wife thinks his situation is unique. I haven't betrayed you, David insisted, his voice rising. I've never touched Sophia, never kissed her, never even been alone with her for more than a few minutes. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity, I countered. And I'm not convinced it hasn't gone further, given the tone of these messages. David's face flushed with anger. So you're calling me a liar now? After 15 years together, you think I'd cheat on you and then lie about it? I don't know what to think anymore, I admitted, and it was true. The foundation of trust that had seemed so solid just hours ago was now crumbling beneath my feet. The David I thought I knew wouldn't exchange messages like these with another woman. The David I thought I knew would have shut down this kind of flirtation immediately, not encouraged it with winky faces and rain checks. He seemed to deflate. Slightly, the anger giving way to something more complex, shame, perhaps, or recognition. I should have, he acknowledged quietly. You're right about that much. I should have been clearer with her about boundaries. But you weren't, I stated flatly. You let it continue. You participated. Yes, he admitted, and the single word seemed to cost him. But not because I was interested in her that way. It was purely strategic, Elise. The account— Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop with the account. I don't want to hear about business or strategy or accounts right now. This isn't about your company. This is about us. About the vows we just renewed and whether they mean anything at all. David stepped forward, reaching for my hands. They mean everything to me. You mean everything to me. This thing with Sophia, it's nothing. A blip. A mistake in judgment that won't be repeated. I allowed him to take my hands, but I felt no warmth in the contact. None of the electricity that had always sparked between us. How can I believe that? How can I trust you when these messages suggest otherwise? Because you know me, he pleaded. The real me, not these messages, not this momentary lapse. You know the man who has loved you for 15 years, who has built a life with you, who stood before our family today and meant every word of his vows. Did I know him? The question echoed in my mind, bringing with it a wave of uncertainty. The man I thought I knew wouldn't have done this, but then, perhaps I had never truly known him at all. I need time, I said finally, withdrawing my hands from his. Time to think, to process this. David's expression fell. What does that mean? It means I don't know what to do with this information right now. It means I need space to figure out what it means for us, for our marriage. Space. He repeated the word hollow. On the night of our vow renewal. Yes. The irony wasn't lost on me. On the night we were supposed to be celebrating our commitment, I'm instead questioning whether that commitment has ever been as mutual as I believed. His face crumpled. Elise, please, don't do this. Let's talk this through. We can fix this. I'm not the one who broke it, I reminded him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You did that when you decided that flirting with Sophia Wallace was an acceptable business strategy. David opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the sound of his phone vibrating on the counter between us. We both looked down to see another message from SW illuminating the screen. Thinking of you. Sweet dreams, handsome. The timing was so perfectly awful that it might have been comical in any other context. As it was, the message hung in the air between us like an indictment, the final piece of evidence in a case already damning. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, I said quietly, turning away from both David and his still vibrating phone. Elise, he called after me, desperation edging his voice. Please, don't walk away, not like this, not today. I paused at the doorway, not turning back to face him. Today, I said softly, was supposed to be about reaffirming our commitment to each other. Instead, it's become about questioning whether that commitment was ever real on your part. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the doorframe. I need time, David. Please respect that at least. Without waiting for his response, I walked away, each step carrying me further from the man I had promised to love for another 15 years, and the celebration that had turned to ashes in my mouth. As I climbed the stairs to the guest room, a space I had lovingly decorated for visitors but never imagined occupying myself, I was struck by the surreal quality of the moment. Just hours ago, I had been standing before our friends and family, reaffirming my commitment to the man I believed was my partner in all things. Now I was retreating to separate sleeping quarters, my heart heavy with questions I never thought I'd have to ask. Behind me, I heard David's footsteps on the stairs, following at a distance. But he didn't call out again, didn't try to stop me. Perhaps he recognized the futility of further argument tonight. Perhaps he had run out of explanations and excuses. Or perhaps, most concerning of all, he was composing a response to Sophia's latest message. Inside the guest room, I closed the door firmly and leaned against it, finally allowing the tears I'd been holding back to fall. They streamed down my face, hot and relentless, as the events of the day replayed in my mind. The beautiful ceremony, the heartfelt vows, the love I'd believed in so completely, all undermined by a single text message and the revelations that followed. What happened now? How did we move forward from this? Was there a way back to the trust we'd once shared, or had it been irreparably damaged? These questions circled in my mind as I slowly, mechanically removed the beautiful dress I'd worn to renew my vows, carefully hanging it in the guest room closet. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The garment that had represented renewed commitment now stored away, separate from my everyday life, just as the vows themselves now seemed like something apart from reality. As I changed into the spare pajamas, kept in the guest room dresser, I heard David's footsteps retreat down the hall, pause outside the door as if he might knock, then continue to our bedroom. Alone. We had begun the day united, recommitting to our shared journey. We were ending it separated by more than just a hallway, separated by betrayal, by broken trust, by the realization that the person I had believed in most completely had been leading a double life of sorts. And somewhere out there, Sophia Wallace was sending my husband goodnight texts, thinking of him as she drifted off to sleep, unaware or perhaps unconcerned that today had been his vow renewal, that he had a wife waiting at home, that his flirtation was tearing apart the fabric of a 15-year marriage. As I climbed into the unfamiliar bed, I wondered if she knew about me at all. Had David mentioned his wife to her? His children? The renewal ceremony that had been planned for months? Or had he conveniently omitted these details, allowing her to believe he was more available than he actually was? These questions would have to wait for morning. For now, exhaustion was overtaking me, the emotional upheaval of the day's final, hours weighing down my limbs and clouding my thoughts. Sleep would be a mercy, a temporary escape from the pain that threatened to overwhelm me. But as I drifted off, one thought remained clear. Tomorrow, I would need answers. Not just from David, but from others who might know the truth. And I would need to decide what those answers meant for the future of our marriage, a future that, just hours ago, had seemed so certain, and now hung in the balance, as fragile and tenuous as trust itself. Morning arrived with painful clarity, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't place where I was. Then reality crashed back. The guest room, the text messages, David's weak explanations. Our vow renewal, transformed from celebration to catastrophe in the span of a few illuminated words on a phone screen. My eyes felt swollen from crying, my body heavy with the kind of exhaustion sleep couldn't cure. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, checking the time. 7:22 a.m. The house was quiet. Was David awake? Had he slept at all? I had questions that needed answers. But first, I needed clarity. Perspective. Moving mechanically, I showered in the guest bathroom, grateful I'd stocked it with basic toiletries for visitors. The hot water couldn't wash away the hurt, but it helped clear my head. Wrapped in a towel, I faced a practical problem. My clothes were in the master bedroom. I wasn't ready to face David in just a towel, vulnerable and exposed. In the guest room closet, I found a robe I'd bought for my sister's last visit. It would have to do. Cautiously, I opened the door, listening for sounds of movement. Nothing. The house held the stillness of early morning, that liminal space before the day properly begins. Moving quietly down the hallway, I paused outside, our bedroom door, hand hesitating on the knob. What if he was awake? What would I say? Before I could decide, the door opened, revealing David fully dressed in jeans and a sweater, his hair damp from a shower. He looked as exhausted as I felt. Dark circles beneath his eyes, lines of strain around his mouth. We stood frozen, staring at each other across a threshold that suddenly seemed impassable. "You're up," he said finally, voice rough with fatigue or emotion. "I need clothes," I replied, the mundane request at odds with the magnitude of what lay between us. He stepped aside wordlessly, allowing me to enter the room we'd shared for years. It felt different now, tainted by knowledge I couldn't unlearn. I moved to my closet, aware of David watching me, the weight of his gaze tangible. "Elise," he began, "about last night." "Not now," I cut him off, selecting jeans and a sweater with mechanical efficiency. "I need to get dressed. I need coffee. I need to think." "We need to talk," he insisted. I turned to face him, clutching my clothes like a shield. "Yes, we do. But not until I'm ready." Something in my expression must have convinced him, because he nodded slowly. "I'll make coffee." He left, closing the door behind him, giving me the privacy to dress. As I pulled on my clothes, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the dresser. Young, beaming faces, so certain of the future stretching before them. Beside it stood a more recent family portrait. David, me, Emma, and Noah, taken last Christmas. The image of familial happiness that now felt like a prop in some elaborate deception. I touched the frame lightly, tracing the outline of our children's faces. They were with my father, blissfully unaware that their parents' renewed vows had shattered hours after being spoken. How would we explain this to them? What would this mean for their sense of security, their understanding of trust and commitment? The thought propelled me downstairs, toward confrontation and painful truths. I found David in the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee on the island between us, an inadequate peace offering, but one I accepted silently, wrapping my hands around the warmth. "I didn't sleep," he said, breaking the silence. "I kept thinking about what you must be feeling, what you must think of me." I took a careful sip, letting the bitter liquid fortify me. "What I think is that I don't know who you are anymore, that everything I believed about our marriage might be a lie." "It's not," he said urgently, taking a step toward me. "Elise, I swear to you, there's been no physical relationship with Sophia, no affair, just some inappropriate texts that I let go too far." "Why?" The question was simple but loaded with implication. David looked away, hands gripping his mug tightly. "It started innocently enough. She's a potential investor with deep pockets, someone Craig brought in to save the Reynolds account. At first, it was just normal business interactions, but she started getting more personal, more flirtatious. And you encouraged it," I stated flatly. He struggled visibly. "I didn't discourage it as firmly as I should have. The account was in trouble, and her investment could save it. I told myself it was just business strategy." "Was it?" His gaze dropped to the counter. "Mostly." The qualifier hung between us, damning in its honesty. "Mostly," I repeated. "And the rest?" "The rest?" He exhaled heavily. "The rest was ego, I suppose. She's younger, attractive, powerful in her field. Her attention was flattering." "Flattering enough to risk our marriage?" My voice remained steady, though inside I was screaming. I never thought it would come to that, he said quickly. I never intended for it to go beyond harmless flirtation. Intent doesn't change impact, I countered, nurse brain taking over, clinical and detached. And those messages I saw weren't harmless. They were intimate, personal, the kind exchanged between people who are more than business associates. David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times over the years. I know how it looks, but you have to believe me, Elise. Nothing physical happened. Nothing was going to happen. You can't know that, I said quietly. You opened a door, David. You may not have walked through it yet, but you created the possibility. He flinched as if I'd struck him. I would never have cheated on you. Never. You already did, I pointed out. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity, and based on those messages, it's clear you crossed lines that should have remained uncrossed. I made a mistake, he admitted, voice cracking slightly. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. But please, Elise, don't throw away 15 years because of it. Don't let this destroy everything we've built together. I'm not the one who put our marriage at risk, I reminded him, setting down my mug with deliberate care. You did that the moment you decided that flirting with Sophia Wallace was an acceptable business strategy. What can I do? He asked, desperation, edging his voice. Tell me how to fix this. I'll do anything. The sincerity in his expression gave me pause. Was this genuine remorse, or just regret at being caught? The man standing before me was the same one who had held me through my mother's illness, who had celebrated every professional achievement with genuine pride, who had been a devoted father to our children. He was also the man who had exchanged inappropriate messages with another woman, who had spent the night before our vow renewal at her lake house, who had responded rain check to her suggestion they run away together. I need to talk to Craig, I said finally. David blinked, clearly not expecting this response. Craig? Why? Because you said he was there, at the lake house, that he can confirm your story about nothing physical happening between you and Sophia. He was. David nodded quickly. He'll tell you the same thing. Then you won't mind if I call him. It wasn't a question. David hesitated fractionally. Of course not. But it's Sunday morning, Elise. He's probably with his family. So were we, I countered, until your phone lit up with that message. Without waiting for his response, I pulled out my own phone and scrolled to Craig's number. David and I had socialized with Craig and his wife Karen enough over the years that having his contact information wasn't unusual. I pressed call before I could second-guess myself. The phone rang several times before a groggy voice answered. Hello? Craig? It's Elise Reynolds. I'm sorry to call so early on a Sunday, but something's come up that can't wait. There was a pause, then, Elise? Is everything okay? Is David's fine, I interrupted. Physically, at least. But I need to ask you about the lake house. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear Craig's mind racing, trying to catch up. The lake house? Where you and David spent the night before our vow renewal. With Sophia Wallace. Ah. The single syllable carried volumes. That lake house. David was watching me intently, anxiety evident in every line of his body. Yes, I confirmed. That lake house. David tells me you were there the whole time, that nothing inappropriate happened between him and Sophia. I was there, Craig said carefully, each word measured. It was a business meeting that ran late. And you were all present for this meeting? Including during the 3 a.m. breakthrough David mentioned? Craig cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, not continuously. I had some international calls to make. The time difference with our Asian investors. So David and Sophia were alone together, I interrupted, my gaze locked with David's, watching the blood drain from his face. Not for long periods, Craig clarified hastily, just intermittently. And there were other people there too, Sophia's business partners, her assistant. Who all left when exactly? I pressed. Craig's discomfort was palpable even through the phone. Look, Elise, I think this is something you and David should discuss. We are discussing it, I assured him. But I need to know what actually happened. Not just David's version. Were they alone together overnight, Craig? A long silence followed, during which I could hear muffled conversation on Craig's end, probably Karen asking what was going on. Not overnight, no, Craig finally answered. Sophia's partners left around midnight. I was there until about 2 a.m., then went to one of the guest rooms. David and Sophia were still working in the main living area when I left them. David closed, his eyes briefly as if in pain. I see, I said, voice remarkably steady considering the implications. And what time did you see them next? Around 7 the next morning, Craig admitted reluctantly, when we all had breakfast before heading back to the city. So there were approximately 5 hours during which you have no idea what transpired between David and Sophia. I suppose that's accurate, yes, Craig conceded. But Elise, I've known David for 20 years. He wouldn't— Thank you, Craig, I cut him off. That's all I needed to know. I ended the call, setting my phone down with deliberate calm despite the storm raging inside me. 5 hours, 5 unaccounted-for hours during which David and Sophia had been alone together in her lake house the night before our vow renewal. Elise, David began, voice pleading. It's not what it sounds like? I finished for him. Because what it sounds like, David, is that you lied to me. Again. You said Craig was there the whole time, that you were never alone with Sophia. Now I find out there were 5 hours during which the two of you were alone together. We were working, he insisted. Going over projections, running financial scenarios. Nothing happened. How can I believe that? I asked, genuine bewilderment in my voice. How can I believe anything you say after discovering you've been lying about your relationship with this woman? Because it's the truth, David said desperately. I swear to you, Elise, nothing physical happened between us. Then why lie about it? Why say Craig was there the whole time if there was nothing to hide? He looked away, shoulders slumping. Because I knew how it would sound. I knew you'd assume the worst. The worst, I echoed. David, I read your texts. I know she was flirting with you and you were reciprocating. I know she suggested skipping our vow renewal to run off with her and you didn't say no. You said rain check. What exactly am I supposed to assume? That was a mistake, he admitted. A terrible choice of words. I was trying to keep things light, to not offend her before we secured the investment. By offering to run away with her another time? My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. That's not keeping things light, David. That's opening a door to something more. He had no answer for that, just stood there looking defeated, the man who had always had an explanation for everything suddenly without words. I want to talk to Samantha, I said abruptly. Samantha? David looked genuinely confused. My assistant? Why? Because she works with you every day. Because she would know if there have been other business meetings with Sophia that I don't know about. Because she might be able to shed light on exactly what kind of relationship you two have. This is getting out of hand, David protested. Samantha has nothing to do with this. If there's nothing to hide, then there's no reason not to talk. To her, I countered. David's expression hardened slightly. Are you planning to interrogate everyone in my office? Where does this end, Elise? It ends when I get the truth, I replied simply. I've given you the truth, he insisted. I've admitted I made a mistake, that I let something harmless go too far. But I've never been unfaithful to you, and I never would be. I studied him, trying to reconcile the man before me with the husband I thought I knew. Was he telling the truth now? Had the flirtation with Sophia truly remained just that? Inappropriate, but ultimately unconsummated. Or was there more he wasn't admitting to? Depths of betrayal still hidden, Let me see your phone again, I said suddenly. What? Your phone. I want to see if Sophia's sent any more messages since last night. David's hesitation was brief but noticeable. Fine, he said, retrieving his phone from his pocket and unlocking it before handing it to me. I opened his messages, finding the thread with SW at the top of the list. There were indeed new messages. Sophia. Good morning, handsome. Last night's dreams were all about you. When can I see you again? There was no response from David, at least not yet. The timestamp showed the message had been received less than an hour ago. She seems pretty invested for someone who's just a business contact, I observed, handing the phone back to him. David looked at the message, wincing visibly. I can't control what she sends me, Elise. No, but you can control how you respond. And based on your previous exchanges, you've been encouraging this. I made a mistake, he repeated, pocketing the phone. One I won't make again. How can I be sure of that? I asked, the question genuinely pained. How can I trust you when you've hidden this from me? When you've lied about the extent of your time alone with her? Because I love you, he said simply. Because despite this terrible lapse in judgment, you are the only woman I want to be with. The only woman I've ever wanted to build a life with. The sincerity in his voice gave me pause. This was the man I had loved for 15 years, the father of my children, my partner through life's joys and sorrows. Could I throw all of that away because of inappropriate texts and a night that remained ambiguous? But then, could I simply accept his explanation and move forward, always wondering if there was more he wasn't telling me, always doubting his late nights at the office or business trips? I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to process all of this. Of course, David agreed quickly, relief evident in his expression. Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest room, give you space. No, I shook my head. I need more space than that. I'm going to stay with my father for a few days. David's face fell. Elise, please, don't leave. We can work through this together. I can't think clearly here, I explained. Not with you right down the hall. Not with every room filled with memories of what I thought we had. What we do have, he corrected urgently. One mistake doesn't erase 15 years, Elise. No, I agreed. But it does call those 15 years into question. Makes me wonder what else I might not know about our marriage, about you. Nothing, he insisted. There's nothing else. This situation with Sophia, it's an anomaly, a temporary insanity that I deeply regret. I wanted to believe him. Part of me, the part that had stood before our friends and family just yesterday, renewing my vows with a full heart, desperately wanted to accept his explanation, to believe that this was indeed just a momentary lapse, in judgment that could be forgiven and moved past. But another part, the part that had read those messages, that had heard Craig confirm 5 unaccounted-for hours, remained deeply skeptical. That part needed distance, perspective, time to sort through the implications of what I'd discovered. I'm going to pack some things, I said, moving toward the stairs. I'll pick up Emma and Noah from Dad's and explain that I'm staying there for a few days. What will you tell them? David asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. I paused, considering. That we had a disagreement and I need some time to think. That it's an adult matter and they shouldn't worry. I turned to face him fully. I won't lie to them, David, but I won't burden them with the full truth either. Not until we figure out what that truth means for our family. He nodded, relief and resignation mingling in his expression. Thank you for that. Upstairs, I packed methodically, selecting enough clothes for several days, along with toiletries and the book I'd been reading before our lives imploded. In our bedroom, David watched silently from the doorway, his presence a weight I could physically feel. Will you talk to me while you're at your father's? He asked as I zipped my suitcase. Take my calls? I don't know, I answered honestly. I need to clear my head first. Elise. His voice caught on my name. I love you. More than anything. Please don't forget that while you're deciding what you believe about me. I looked up at him, standing in the doorway of the room we'd shared for years, looking lost and smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his mistakes. Despite everything, my heart ached for him, for us, for what we might have already lost. I love you too, I admitted, quietly. That's what makes this so painful. 40 minutes later, I was driving to my father's house, the events of the past 15 hours playing on repeat in my mind. The vow renewal, so perfect and moving, the devastating text message, the confrontation, the revelations that followed. It felt surreal, like something happening to someone else, a storyline in a drama I was merely observing rather than living. My father's house came into view, the home where I'd grown up, where I'd mourned my mother, where my children now found comfort and stability in their grandfather's unwavering love. As I parked in the driveway, I saw Emma and Noah in the front yard, engaged in what appeared to be an intense game of badminton with my father officiating. The normality of the scene, children playing, family together on a Sunday morning, contrasted sharply with the chaos of my internal state. How did I cross this threshold between worlds? How did I step from my private anguish into this scene of ordinary happiness? Before I could decide, Noah spotted my car and came running, racket abandoned. On the lawn. Mom, Grandpa made blueberry pancakes, and we're winning at badminton. Emma followed more sedately, typical teenage restraint masking her affection. I thought you and Dad were having a morning after breakfast at that place downtown, she said, making air quotes around morning after with a slight eye roll. The one with the amazing croissants? The plans we'd made for today, before everything shattered. Another reminder of all that had changed in the span of a few illuminated words on a screen. Change of plans, I said, forcing a smile as I hugged Noah, then Emma, breathing in the familiar scent of my children, drawing strength from their solid presence. I thought we might stay with Grandpa for a few days. Would that be okay? Emma's perceptive gaze sharpened. Without Dad? Dad needs to focus on a work situation, I explained, the partial truth bitter on my tongue. And I thought we could use some quality time with Grandpa. Is everything okay? Emma pressed, too observant for her 14 years. You look like you've been crying. Everything's... I hesitated, unwilling to lie outright, but unable to share the full truth. Everything's complicated right now. Adult stuff, but nothing for you to worry about. Noah, at 11 still blissfully unaware of the nuances of adult relationships, accepted this explanation easily. Can we have a movie night with Grandpa? With popcorn and M&Ms mixed together like he lets us do? Absolutely, I assured him, grateful for his simple perspective, his ability to find joy in small pleasures despite the complex emotional currents swirling around him. Emma wasn't so easily distracted. Did you and Dad have a fight? I met her gaze directly, respecting her enough to offer at least partial honesty. We had a disagreement, yes, one that we need some time to work through. That's why I'm staying here for a bit. Because of the text message? She asked, her voice dropping to ensure Noah wouldn't hear. My heart stopped. What text message? Emma's expression was a mixture of discomfort and determination. Last night, when Dad's phone lit up, I was coming to ask about breakfast today, and I saw you both standing there, looking at his phone. You seemed really upset. The realization that my daughter had witnessed that moment, the exact instant our world had begun to fracture, sent a chill through me. You saw that? She nodded. I didn't see what it said, just that something on Dad's phone made you really upset. I took a deep breath, trying to decide how much to share with my perceptive, mature beyond her years daughter. Yes, there was a message that concerned me. Dad and I are trying to figure some things out now. Are you guys getting divorced? The question was direct, the fear behind it palpable. No, I said quickly, then moderated my response. At least that's not what I want. We're just taking some time apart to think. Emma studied me, seeming to weigh my words against what she had observed. Okay, she said finally. But you'll tell us if things change, right? If we need to know something important? Of course, I promised, pulling her into another hug, this one fiercer than before. You and Noah are the most important people in my life. I would never keep anything from you that you needed to know. She hugged me back, her lanky teenage frame holding mine with surprising strength. I love you, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. I love you too, Em, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. More than anything in this world. As we pulled apart, my father approached, his expression concerned but reserved. At 72, he had seen enough of life to know when to press for details and when to simply offer support. Elise, he greeted me with a warm hug. This is an unexpected surprise. I need to stay for a few days, Dad, I said quietly. With the kids. Without David, he noted, his tone neutral but his eyes searching mine. Without David, I confirmed. He nodded once, decisively. Your home is always here when you need it, for whatever reason, for however long. The simple acceptance, the unquestioning support nearly undid me. Thank you, I managed. Go get settled, he suggested, gesturing toward the house. Your room is always ready. I'll finish this championship match with the grandkids. As I walked toward the house that had sheltered me through childhood, I felt both achingly vulnerable and strangely empowered. In the space of 24 hours, I had renewed my marriage vows and then discovered reason to question whether those vows had ever been truly honored. I had confronted my husband, demanded truth, and made the difficult decision to step away to gain perspective. I didn't know what the coming days would bring, what decisions I would ultimately make about my marriage. But I knew this. Whatever happened, I would face it with clarity and strength, for my children's sake and for my own. Behind me, I could hear Noah's triumphant shout as he scored a point, Emma's good-natured protest, my father's laughter as he refereed their game. Life continuing, family enduring, love persisting despite the fractures and failures that threatened to break it apart. And somewhere across town, in the home we had built together, David was facing his own reckoning. With his choices, with the consequences of those choices, with what they meant for our future. Whether that future would include us together remained to be seen. For now, all I knew with certainty was that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The text message, those 7 luminous words on a darkened screen, had changed everything. Illuminating corners of our marriage I had never thought to examine, revealing truths I could no longer ignore. Miss you already, baby. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next week. Simple words, devastating impact. The beginning of an unraveling I couldn't yet see the end of and wasn't sure I was ready to face. 3 days at my father's house had done little to clarify my thoughts. If anything, the distance from David had only complicated matters, allowing doubts to multiply in the vacuum of his absence. Every memory of our 15 years together now required re-evaluation. Every moment of happiness viewed through the lens of potential deception. Had there been other women before Sophia? Other business strategies that involved flirtation and questionable boundaries? The texts I'd seen suggested a comfort with this dynamic that unsettled me. Not the awkward fumbling of someone crossing a line for the first time, but the ease of someone familiar with the territory. My father, true to form, had asked no questions beyond the initial, "Are you okay?" When I'd responded with a terse, "Not really," he'd simply nodded and said, "I'm here when you want to talk." It was his way, patient, unobtrusive support that created space for me to come to him when ready. Emma and Noah had settled into the rhythm of staying at Grandpa's house with relative ease, though Emma continued to watch me with two perceptive eyes. Noah had asked about David only once, accepting my explanation that Dad needs to focus on work for a few days, with the trusting nature of a child who has never had reason to doubt his parents' words. David had called each day, speaking briefly with the children in the evening, careful to keep their conversations light and normal. With me, he had been respectful of the distance I'd requested, sending only brief texts. I miss you. Take all the time you need, but please know I'm thinking of you constantly. The house feels empty without you all here. I love you, Elise. I've told Sophia that our communication was inappropriate and needs to stop. I've blocked her number. Craig is handling her investment interests from now on. The last message had come this morning, and I'd stared at it for a long time, trying to gauge my response. Was this a genuine step toward rebuilding trust, or a performative gesture meant to appease me without addressing the deeper issues? I was still contemplating this when my phone rang. Not David, but Vanessa, my best friend. Since college. Hey, I answered, stepping onto my father's back porch for privacy. Okay, spill it, she said without preamble. I've given you 3 days of radio silence after your vow renewal, which is 3 days more than best friend protocol typically allows. What's going on? Why are you at your dad's without David? I took a deep breath. I hadn't told anyone outside the family about the situation, partly because I was still processing it myself, partly because saying the words aloud would make the reality inescapable. Something happened, I began haltingly. After the ceremony, after everyone left, I recounted the events of that night, the illuminated phone screen, the damning message, the subsequent confrontation and revelations. As I spoke, the emotions I'd been carefully managing for the children's sake came rushing to the surface. Anger, hurt, confusion, fear. That absolute bastard, Vanessa hissed when I finished. 15 years, and he pulls this crap? The night of your vow renewal, no less? He claims nothing physical happened, I said, though even to my own ears the defense sounded weak. And you believe that? Vanessa's skepticism was palpable. I don't know what to believe anymore, I admitted. The David I thought I knew wouldn't have crossed these lines at all, but he did, so maybe I don't know him as well as I thought I did. Have you talked to Samantha? Vanessa asked. His assistant? Not yet. I've been trying to decide if that's crossing a line of my own. Screw lines, Vanessa said firmly. He obliterated the boundaries of your marriage. You have every right to get answers however you can. I sighed, leaning against the porch railing. Even if I talk to her, how do I know she'll tell me the truth? She's David's employee, dependent on him for her livelihood. True, Vanessa acknowledged, but Samantha's always struck me as someone with integrity, and she seemed to really like you at the company Christmas party last year. It feels like, I don't know, like I'd be spying on him. It's not spying to ask direct questions about a situation that affects your marriage, Vanessa countered. Look, if David has nothing to hide, then talking to Samantha will only confirm that. And if he does, I need to know. I finished quietly. Exactly. So what's stopping you? I considered the question. What was stopping me? Fear? Certainly. Fear of what I might discover. Fear that the truth might be worse than the uncertainty. But also a strange sense of loyalty. A reluctance to expose our marital problems to outsiders, even when those problems had been created by David's actions, not mine. I guess I'm afraid of what I'll find out, I admitted. And also, I feel like if I start investigating him, treating him like a suspect, there's no going back. We cross a threshold where trust is not just damaged, but actively demolished. Elise, Vanessa said gently, that threshold was crossed the moment you saw those messages. The trust is already broken. Now it's about whether it can be rebuilt, and that requires knowing exactly what you're dealing with. She was right, of course. The comfortable illusion of our marriage had shattered the moment I saw "Miss You Already, Baby" illuminated on David's screen. Everything since then had been an exercise in damage assessment, trying to determine whether what remained could be salvaged or was beyond repair. I'll call her, I decided. Today. Want me to come over? Moral support and all that? I smiled, despite everything, grateful for her steadfast friendship. No, but thanks. I think this is something I need to do alone. After ending the call with Vanessa, I stood on the porch a moment longer, gathering my courage. Then I pulled up Samantha's contact information in my phone. We weren't close, but we'd exchanged numbers for various work functions and family events. Over the years, she'd been David's assistant. My finger hovered over the call button. Was I really going to do this? Interrogate my husband's assistant about his relationship with another woman? But what choice did I have? David's explanations had been undermined by his lies about the time alone with Sophia. Craig's information had contradicted David's story in key ways. If I wanted the truth, and I did, desperately, I needed to pursue it directly. I pressed call. Samantha answered on the third ring, her professional tone instantly recognizable. Samantha Williams speaking. Samantha, it's Elise Reynolds. A brief pause. Elise, how are you? The vow renewal ceremony was beautiful. Thank you, I responded automatically, then pushed forward before I could lose my nerve. I'm actually calling because I need to ask you something. About David. Another pause, longer this time. Of course, she said, her tone shifting slightly. Is everything okay? Not really, I admitted. I need to ask you about Sophia Wallace. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. I see, Samantha finally said, her voice carefully neutral. I know this puts you in an awkward position, I acknowledged. But I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I need to know the nature of David's relationship with her. Samantha took an audible breath. Elise, Please, I interrupted. I've seen messages between them. I know something inappropriate has been going on. What I don't know is the full extent of it, and I can't make decisions about my marriage without all the facts. I understand, she said quietly. And I want to help you, I do. But I'm not sure how much I can say. Not because I'm trying to protect David, she clarified quickly, but because I simply don't know everything. Tell me what you do know, I urged. Anything that might help me understand what's been happening. Samantha was silent for a moment, seeming to weigh her options. When she spoke again, her voice was resolute. Ms. Wallace first came to the office about 2 months ago, as Craig was courting her investment firm for the Reynolds account. She specifically requested to work with David after their initial meeting. And David agreed to this? Yes. Craig was thrilled. Said she was the perfect investor for the project. David seemed less enthusiastic at first. This caught me by surprise. At first? He was hesitant, Samantha explained. Said he got a strange vibe from her, but Craig convinced him her investment was too important to pass up. What changed? I pressed. If David was initially hesitant, what changed his mind? I'm not entirely sure, Samantha admitted. But about 3 weeks ago, they had a private meeting in his office. When she left, he seemed different, more animated about the project, more personally invested in securing her as an investor. A knot formed in my stomach. 3 weeks ago would align with the beginning of the flirtatious texts I'd seen. Did they spend a lot of time alone together? I asked, dreading the answer. More than was strictly necessary for the business at hand, Samantha confirmed. And she called frequently, always asking specifically for David, even when Craig was the more appropriate contact for her questions. And how did David respond to this? He always took her calls, Samantha said carefully, and he began rearranging his schedule to accommodate her requests for meetings, sometimes at unusual hours. The knot in my stomach tightened. Did he ever mention these meetings to you? Explain why they needed to be at unusual hours. He said Ms. Wallace had a complicated schedule due to other business interests, that we needed to be flexible to secure her investment. Samantha hesitated. But? I prompted when she didn't continue. But last week, I overheard something that concerned me, she admitted. I wasn't eavesdropping, she added quickly. I was bringing documents into David's office when I heard him on the phone with her. He was saying something about carefully managing expectations and maintaining appearances. When he saw me, he ended the call abruptly. Did he explain what he meant by those phrases? No. He acted as if nothing unusual had happened, asked me about the documents I'd brought in, but it felt off. My mind raced, trying to interpret these fragments, to construct a coherent narrative from the pieces I was gathering. What expectations was David carefully managing? Sophia's romantic expectations? His business partner's expectations? Mine? There's something else, Samantha continued, her voice lower now, as if concerned about being overheard despite being on a cell phone. The day before your vow renewal, Ms. Wallace sent a large arrangement of flowers to the office for David. The card said something like, "Looking forward to tonight." I thought it was strange, given that you two had your ceremony the next day, the lake house. The night David had supposedly been engaged in late-night business discussions while I was at home preparing for our vow renewal. Did David explain the flowers? I asked. He said they were a thank you for some advice he'd given her. On another investment, Samantha replied. But he seemed uncomfortable. He took the card immediately and put them in his private office, away from the main reception area. Each revelation was another blow, another crack in the foundation of trust that had sustained our marriage. I felt physically ill, the conversation confirming my worst fears even as it raised new questions. Samantha, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. In your opinion, based on what you've observed, do you think David and Sophia Wallace are having an affair? It was an impossible question to ask, putting her in an impossible position. But I needed to hear her assessment, her impression as someone who saw David every day in a professional context. Samantha's response was measured, each word chosen with evident care. I don't have direct evidence of a physical affair, she said finally, but their interactions have gone beyond what I would consider appropriate for a professional relationship. There's an intimacy to their communication, a familiarity that seems personal. It wasn't a definitive yes, but it wasn't a no either. And coming from someone as professional and discreet as Samantha, it spoke volumes. Thank you for being honest with me, I said. I know this puts you in a difficult position. Elise, Samantha said suddenly, her voice more urgent now. There's one more thing you should know. Yesterday, David came in and told me he would no longer be handling the Wallace account directly. He asked me to transfer all communications and meetings related to her to Craig going forward. Did he explain why? He said there had been a misunderstanding that made it inappropriate for him to continue as her primary contact. Samantha paused. He seemed upset, not angry but deeply troubled. I've never seen him like that before. This aligned with the text David had sent me this morning, claiming he had cut off communication with Sophia. Was it genuine remorse driving this decision, or simply damage control after being caught? Thank you, Samantha, I said again. You've been more helpful than you know. Elise, she said, before I could end the call. For what it's worth, David talks about you constantly at the office, shows everyone pictures of you and the kids, brags about your work at the hospital. Whatever's happened with Ms. Wallace, I don't think it reflects how he feels about you. Her words were meant to comfort, I knew, but they only deepened my confusion. How could a man who supposedly loved his wife, who bragged about her to colleagues, engage in behavior that so directly threatened their marriage? What kind of compartmentalization allowed for such dissonance? "Thank you," I said one final time, unable to formulate a more coherent response. After ending the call, I sat heavily on the porch steps, trying to process everything I'd learned. The picture emerging was not encouraging. Secret meetings, rearranged schedules, intimate communications, flowers the day before our vow renewal, and cryptic references to maintaining appearances. None of it proved a physical affair, but collectively, it painted a picture of a relationship that had clearly crossed professional boundaries, that existed in a gray area between business and something more personal, more intimate. I was still sitting there, lost in thought, when my father stepped onto the porch, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. Without a word, he sat beside me and offered one, his weathered face creased with concern but free of judgment. We sat in silence for several minutes, the familiar comfort of his presence grounding me amid the emotional turbulence. "I talked to David's assistant," I said finally, staring into my coffee as if it might contain answers. "About Sophia Wallace." My father nodded, waiting patiently for me to continue. "She confirmed what I already suspected, that there's been inappropriate communication between them, meetings that went beyond professional necessity." I took a sip of coffee, the bitter liquid matching my mood. "But she couldn't, or wouldn't, confirm whether it had progressed to a physical affair. And what does your heart tell you?" my father asked quietly. I considered the question. What did my heart tell me? Not my fears, not my insecurities, but my deepest intuition about the man I'd been married to for 15 years? "My heart tells me that David loves me," I said slowly. "That whatever happened with Sophia, it wasn't about not loving me enough." "But," my father prompted, hearing the unspoken qualification. "But my heart also tells me that something significant happened between them," I continued. "Something more than just flirtatious texts. Whether it was physical or not almost seems beside the point now." "Because the trust is broken either way," my father suggested. "Exactly." I turned to look at him, grateful for his quiet wisdom. "How do you rebuild that, Dad? How do you move forward when the foundation of your marriage has been cracked so deeply?" He was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant, and I knew he was thinking of my mother, of their 40-year marriage, of the challenges they'd weathered together, of the love that had sustained them through it all. "Trust," he said finally, "is like a valuable vase that's been shattered. You can glue it back together, and from a distance it might look the same. But up close, you'll always see the cracks. The question becomes, can you accept that it will never be exactly as it was before, and still find it beautiful?" I considered his metaphor, feeling its truth resonate within me. "And if you can't? Then you have to decide whether to keep it, damaged as it is, or let it go and create something new." We lapsed into silence again, the weight of his words settling around us. In the yard beyond the porch, I could see Emma and Noah playing a card game at the picnic table, their heads bent close together in concentration, their laughter drifting. Toward us on the afternoon breeze, my children, the most precious creation of our marriage, innocent bystanders to the fractures forming in their parents' relationship. Whatever decision I made about David, about our marriage, would affect them profoundly, not just in the immediate aftermath, but in how they understood love, trust, and commitment in their own future relationships. "The kids are the hardest part," I said softly. "I keep thinking about what this will do to them if you and David can't repair what's been broken," my father finished for me. I nodded, unable to voice the fear that had been growing since that first devastating text message. That perhaps our marriage couldn't be saved, that the damage was too extensive, the betrayal too profound. "Children are remarkably resilient," my father said, following my gaze to where Emma and Noah sat. "Not that it would be easy for them, but they can adapt to changes in family structure if they feel secure. In the love of both parents. Is that enough, though? I wondered aloud. Loving them separately instead of together? It can be, he assured me. It's not ideal, perhaps, but children thrive when they're loved consistently and authentically. Sometimes staying in a deeply damaged marriage can be more harmful to them than a thoughtful, compassionate separation. His words gave me permission to consider all options, to acknowledge that staying together for the children wasn't necessarily the right answer if the marriage itself couldn't be healed. I don't know what to do, Dad, I admitted, the words catching in my throat. He put his arm around me, the gesture so reminiscent of my childhood that tears sprang to my eyes. You don't have to decide everything today, Elise. Take the time you need. Listen to your heart, but also to your head. And remember that whatever you decide, you're not alone. The simple reassurance broke something inside me, and I leaned into his embrace, allowing myself to cry for the first time since coming to his house. Not the controlled tears I'd shed in private, careful not to upset the children, but deep, body-shaking sobs that released some of the fear and anger and confusion I'd been carrying. My father held me through it, his strength and steadiness a reminder of the man who had taught me what love should look like, what commitment truly meant. The example I had believed David was following in our own marriage. When the storm of emotion finally passed, I straightened up, wiping my eyes and taking a steadying breath. I think I need to see him, I said. Talk to him face to face with everything I've learned. My father nodded. That seems wise. But I don't want to take the kids back to the house yet, I continued. Not until I know where things stand. They can stay here as long as needed, he assured me. You know that. I did know that, had always known it. My father's unwavering support was one of the constants in my life, a foundation I could build upon even when everything else seemed uncertain. I'll go tomorrow, I decided, while the kids are at school. That way we can talk without interruption, without having to maintain appearances for their sake. And if he's at work? I'll call first, I said. Ask him to meet me at the house. This isn't a conversation that should happen at his office. My father nodded, agreeing with my assessment. Just remember, Elise, whatever happened, whatever decisions you make, your worth isn't defined by his actions. You remain who you've always been, strong, compassionate, worthy of love and respect. His words touched something deep within me, a core of self that had been shaken by David's betrayal but not destroyed. I was still me, still the pediatric nurse who helped heal children, still the mother who loved fiercely, still the woman who had built a life of meaning and purpose. Thank you, Dad, I said softly, for everything. He squeezed my shoulder gently. That's what fathers are for. As we sat together, watching Emma and Noah play in the yard, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. The path forward was still uncertain, the future of my marriage still in question, but I had clarity about the next step. Confronting David with everything I now knew, demanding complete honesty, and then, only then, deciding whether what remained of our relationship could be salvaged. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to David. I'd like to talk tomorrow. Meet me at the house at 11. The children will be at school. I think it's time we had a completely honest conversation about everything that's happened. His response came almost immediately. I'll be there. Thank you for being willing to talk. I love you, Elise. I didn't respond to the declaration of love, couldn't bring myself to either confirm or deny my own feelings in that moment. They were too tangled, too complicated by everything that had transpired since those fateful words had illuminated his phone screen at our vow renewal. Tomorrow would be a reckoning. For David, for our marriage, for the life we had built together over 15 years. Whatever came after would depend on his honesty, on my capacity for forgiveness, and on whether the foundation that had been so severely damaged could bear the weight of a future together. As my father went back inside to start dinner, I remained, on the porch, watching my children play with a mixture of love and apprehension. They had gone to sleep the night of the vow renewal, believing in the solidity of their family, the permanence of their parents' commitment to each other. Now, just days later, that certainty hung in the balance, dependent on conversations yet to be had, truths yet to be revealed. Tomorrow I would face David with all my questions, all my fears, all my doubts. Tomorrow I would discover whether the man I had renewed my vows with was the man I thought he was, or someone else entirely, someone capable of betrayal, of deception, of putting his own desires above the sanctity of our marriage. Tomorrow, I would learn whether 15 years of love could withstand the storm that had been unleashed by 7 simple words on a phone screen. Miss you already, baby. Last night was amazing. Words that had changed everything in an instant, revealing what had perhaps been hidden all along. That the marriage I thought we had, the trust I believed was unshakable, had been built on foundations more fragile than I had ever imagined possible. The house felt different as I pulled into the driveway. Still mine, still filled with 15 years of memories, but somehow altered, as if the emotional upheaval of the past few days had physically transformed the space. Or perhaps it was I who had changed, viewing everything through the lens of newfound doubt. David's car was already there, parked in his usual spot, punctual as always. I sat in my own car for a moment, gathering courage, rehearsing what I wanted to say. The conversation ahead would likely determine the course of my future, our future, and I needed clarity, strength, and most of all, honesty, both from David and from myself. The front door opened before I reached it. David stood in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a gray sweater I'd given him for his birthday last year. He looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes suggesting sleep had been as elusive for him as it had been for me. "Elise," he said, my name carrying a weight of emotion. "Thank you for coming." An odd formality to his greeting, as if I were a visitor to the home we'd shared for over a decade. I nodded, stepping past him into the foyer, hyper-aware of the space between us, the careful distance we both maintained. "Would you like coffee?" he offered, closing the door behind me. "I just made a fresh pot." "That would be nice," I agreed, following him to the kitchen. The domesticity of the moment felt surreal, standing in our kitchen as David poured coffee into my favorite mug, adding the precise amount of cream I preferred. How could these familiar rhythms continue when everything fundamental had changed? We settled at the kitchen island, the granite countertop between us like a neutral zone in contested territory. "How are the kids?" he asked, wrapping his hands around his own mug. "They're okay," I replied. Confused, but okay. Emma suspects something more serious than a routine disagreement, but she hasn't pressed for details. Noah just wants to know when we'll all be home together again. David winced at this, pain flashing across his features. "And what have you told them?" "That we're working through some adult issues, that we both love them, and that whatever happens, that won't change." He nodded slowly. "Thank you for not demonizing me to them. They deserve better than to be caught in the middle of this," I said simply. "This situation is between you and me." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "Between you and me." A silence stretched between us, filled with all the words yet unspoken, all the questions still unanswered. Finally, I set my mug down firmly, the soft clink against granite marking the transition from small talk to the real purpose of our meeting. "I spoke with Samantha yesterday," I said directly. David's expression shifted. Surprise followed quickly by resignation. "I see. She told me about the flowers Sophia sent the day before our vow renewal, about how you've been rearranging your schedule to accommodate her, taking her calls at unusual hours, about overhearing you discussing managing expectations and maintaining appearances." He didn't deny any of it, just watched me with a combination of wariness and what appeared to be genuine remorse. She also told me that you've removed yourself from the Wallace account, I continued, that you instructed her to transfer all communications to Craig going forward. Yes, he confirmed. I did that the morning after you left. Why? The question was simple but crucial. David took a deep breath, as if bracing himself. Because you were right, he admitted. I crossed lines that should never have been crossed. My relationship with Sophia had become inappropriate, and it was threatening what matters most to me, my marriage, my family. What exactly was your relationship with her, David? I pressed. I want the complete truth. No more half-explanations or business justifications, just the unvarnished reality of what happened between you and Sophia Wallace. He met my gaze directly, something shifting in his expression, a resignation perhaps, or a decision to finally drop the pretenses. It started exactly as I told you, he began. Craig brought her in as a potential investor for the Reynolds account. She requested to work directly with me after our initial meeting. At first, it was strictly professional, but she began making comments, sending texts that were increasingly personal in nature. And you encouraged this, I stated, not a question, but a confirmation of what I already knew from the messages I'd seen. Yes, he admitted. I told myself it was harmless flirtation, that it was keeping her engaged with the project. The truth is... He hesitated, seeming to struggle with the admission. The truth is that I enjoyed it. Her attention was flattering. It made me feel valued in a way that was different from family life. The honesty stung, but I appreciated it more than another evasion. Continue. The texts became more frequent, more intimate. She suggested the meeting at her lake house, ostensibly to review financials in a relaxed setting. Craig came along, as did her business partners initially. But as the evening progressed, the others gradually dispersed. Craig to take calls, her partners back to the city. Leaving you alone with her, I filled in. For those 5 hours Craig couldn't account for. David nodded, his gaze dropping to his coffee. Yes. My heart pounded painfully against my ribs, dreading what might come next, but needing to hear it. And what happened during those 5 hours? David? He looked up, meeting my eyes again. We talked. We drank champagne. She made it very clear that she was interested in something beyond a professional relationship. And? My voice was barely audible. And I was tempted, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. More tempted than I've ever been in our marriage. There was a moment when she moved closer, when it seemed like we might... My breath caught. The possibility of what he might say next almost unbearable. But I didn't, he finished firmly. I told her I was married, that I loved my wife, that we were renewing our vows the very next day. I made it clear that while I valued her as an investor, nothing physical could happen between us. I studied his face, searching for signs of deception, for the tells I'd come to recognize over 15 years together. You expect me to believe that after all the flirtatious texts, after failing to shut down her suggestion about running off to the Maldives, after responding rain check instead of no, you suddenly found your moral compass at the crucial moment? I know how it sounds, David acknowledged, and I don't blame you for doubting me. But it's the truth, Elise. When faced with the actual moment of crossing that final line, I couldn't do it. Not because I suddenly remembered my principles, but because I suddenly remembered you, really remembered you, not as an abstract concept of my wife, but as the woman I've loved for 15 years, the mother of my children, my partner in everything. Important. Then why continue the flirtation afterward? I challenged. Why text as if something had happened between you? Because I was trying to have it both ways, he admitted, shame evident in his expression. I wanted to maintain her interest in the investment without giving her what she really wanted. I thought I could manage the situation, keep it in this gray area where nothing physical happened, but the possibility kept her engaged. Until I saw the text, I concluded. Until you saw the text, he agreed. And everything collapsed. As it should have, he added. What I was doing was wrong, Elise. Not just a mistake or a lapse in judgment, but fundamentally wrong. I betrayed your trust, disrespected our marriage, and nearly destroyed everything that matters to me. His words held the ring of authenticity, but I'd believed in his sincerity before, only to discover layers of deception beneath. How do I know you're telling the truth now? How do I know this isn't just another story crafted to save what's left of our marriage? David was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. You don't, he said finally. I've damaged your trust to the point where my words alone can't rebuild it. All I can offer is the truth as I've shared it, and the actions I've already taken, removing myself from the Wallace account, blocking Sophia's number, being completely transparent about everything that happened. And if I asked to see your phone right now, I tested. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket, unlocked the device, and placed it on the counter between us. Look at anything you want. Call records, texts, emails. There's nothing left to hide. I stared at the phone but didn't reach for it. The offer itself, the lack of resistance or defensiveness, told me something important. Either David was telling the truth, or he had become masterful at covering his tracks. And if it was the latter, would checking his phone really reveal anything? I want to believe you, I said softly. But even if nothing physical happened with Sophia, you still engaged in an emotional affair. You still prioritized the thrill of her attention over the sanctity of our marriage. Yes, he agreed, not attempting to minimize or justify his actions. I did, and I can't undo that, can't erase the hurt I've caused. All I can do is acknowledge it fully, take responsibility for it, and commit to never allowing anything like it to happen again. If you're willing to give me that chance. I don't know if I can, I admitted, voicing the fear that had been growing since that first devastating text message. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, ever look at you without wondering if there's something or someone you're hiding from me. I understand that, David said, pain evident in his voice, and I would understand if you decided that what I've done is unforgivable. But before you make that decision, there's something else I need to tell you. My stomach clenched, with apprehension. What? I've started therapy, he said. Individual counseling, to understand why I allowed this to happen, why I risked everything important for something so hollow and meaningless. This wasn't what I had expected. When? I had my first session yesterday. I found someone who specializes in marital issues, infidelity, rebuilding trust. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. I'm not telling you this to win points or to pressure you in any way. Whether you decide to stay in this marriage or not, I need to address the flaws in myself that led to this situation. I need to be a better man, for myself, for our children, and for you, if you're still willing to be my wife. The sincerity in his voice, the evidence of concrete action rather than mere promises, gave me pause. This wasn't the defensive man who had tried to explain away inappropriate texts as business strategy. This was someone taking genuine responsibility, seeking help to understand and change destructive patterns. I appreciate that, I said honestly. It shows a commitment to real change, not just crisis management. That's exactly what it is, David agreed, because even if... His voice caught, emotion overwhelming him for a moment. Even if our marriage can't be saved, I never want to be the man who did this again. I never want to cause this kind of pain to anyone else, and I want to be the father our children deserve. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his words settling between us. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of a lawnmower, a neighbor's dog barking, ordinary life continuing while ours hung in the balance. I've been thinking a lot about trust, I said finally. About what it means to trust someone completely, And what happens when that trust is broken? David listened attentively, giving me space to articulate thoughts I was still forming. My father said something that resonated with me. I continued. He compared trust to a valuable vase that's been shattered. You can glue it back together, and from a distance, it might look the same. But up close, you'll always see the cracks. That's a powerful metaphor, David acknowledged quietly. The question becomes whether I can accept that our trust will never be exactly as it was before, I said. Whether I can find beauty in something that will always bear the marks of having been broken. Can you? He asked, vulnerability naked in his expression. I took a deep breath, searching my heart for the honest answer, not what would be easiest or most comfortable, but what was true. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I think I want to try. The hope that bloomed in David's eyes was cautious, tempered by understanding that this was not forgiveness or reconciliation, but merely the possibility of beginning that journey. What does that mean, practically speaking? He asked. It means I'm not ready to give up on 15 years of marriage, on the family we've built, on the love that brought us to renew our vows in the first place, I explained. But it also means I need time and space and evidence that what happened with Sophia was truly an anomaly, not a pattern or a sign of deeper problems in our relationship. I understand, David said, reaching across the island as if to take my hand, then stopping himself, respecting the boundaries I'd established. Whatever you need, however long it takes, I'm committed to rebuilding what I damaged, if you'll give me that chance. I think, I said slowly, that we should consider couples therapy in addition to your individual sessions. If we're going to rebuild trust, we need neutral ground, professional guidance. Absolutely, he agreed immediately. I'll make the arrangements today if you want. I nodded, a plan taking shape in my mind. And I think the children and I should stay at Dad's a while longer. Not indefinitely, but until we've had a few therapy sessions, until I feel more confident about the path forward. Of course, David said, though I could see the pain this caused him. Whatever you need. And complete transparency, I added. About everything. Your schedule, your communications, your progress in therapy. No more secrets, no more compartmentalizing different areas of your life. Complete transparency, he echoed firmly. I swear it, Elise. We looked at each other across the kitchen island, the space between us still vast but perhaps beginning to narrow, one painful, honest conversation at a time. I should go, I said, glancing at my watch. I promised Dad I'd be back for lunch with him and the kids. David nodded, following me to the door. At the threshold, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Thank you, he said simply, for being willing to consider a path forward when you would have every right to walk away. I haven't decided yet, I reminded him gently. This is just the beginning of a process, not a guarantee. I understand, he assured me. And I'm grateful for, even this much, the chance to try to earn back your trust, to become the husband you deserve. As I drove away, glancing in the rearview mirror at David standing in the doorway of our home, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, lingering hurt and anger, yes, but also a tentative hope that perhaps what had been broken could indeed be repaired, even if the cracks would always remain visible. 6 months later, I stood in our kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner while Emma set the table, and Noah regaled us with tales from his soccer practice. David would be home soon, returning from a therapy session that had become part of our new weekly rhythm. Individual counseling for him, couples therapy for us together, a structure that had slowly, painstakingly begun to rebuild what had been damaged. The past months had not been easy. There had been painful revelations in therapy, moments of doubt when I questioned whether reconciliation was even possible, days when the memory of that illuminated text message threatened to overwhelm the progress we'd made. But there had also been genuine growth, both in David and in our relationship. His commitment to understanding the factors that had led him to risk our marriage had never wavered. His transparency about his daily life, his thoughts, his struggles, had been complete. And gradually, incrementally, I had begun to trust again, not with the innocent, unquestioning trust of before, but with something more mature, more conscious, more chosen. 2 months ago, the children and I had moved back home, a decision made, after careful consideration and extensive discussions with our therapist. The transition had been both joyful and challenging, requiring new patterns of communication, new ways of being together as a family. The sound of the front door opening caught my attention, and I turned to see David entering the kitchen, briefcase in hand, expression brightening as he took in the domestic scene before him. "Dad," Noah exclaimed, abandoning his soccer story to launch himself at his father. "I scored 2 goals today." "That's amazing, buddy," David enthused, setting down his briefcase to catch our son in a hug. "Can't wait to hear all about it." His gaze met mine over Noah's head, a silent check-in that had become our habit, a way of reconnecting, of confirming that we were still on solid ground. I smiled, a genuine warmth in the expression that had once been so difficult to summon in his presence. "How was your session?" I asked. "Good," he replied, moving toward me after releasing Noah. "Challenging, but good. Dr. Martin says hi." He stopped just short of embracing me, another habit developed during our reconciliation, allowing me to initiate physical contact, never presuming or pushing beyond my comfort level. I closed the distance between us, wrapping my arms around his waist in a brief but genuine hug. "Dinner in 20, I murmured against his shoulder. "Perfect," he replied, the single word carrying layers of meaning, acknowledgement of the moment, appreciation for our renewed closeness, understanding of how far we'd come and how far we still had to go. As he moved away to change out of his work clothes and help the children finish setting the table, I returned to my chopping, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The night of our vow renewal seemed simultaneously recent and distant, a pivotal moment that had both nearly destroyed our marriage and ultimately transformed it into something different, not better or worse, necessarily, but more authentic, more conscious, more deliberately chosen. My father's metaphor had proven apt. Our trust had indeed been shattered, and while we had carefully, painstakingly glued the pieces back together, the cracks remained visible. No longer raw and jagged, but present nonetheless, reminders of what had been broken and what had been learned in the process of repair. I thought of Sophia Wallace, who had eventually sold her investment shares in the Reynolds account back to the company, removing herself completely from David's professional orbit. I thought of the painful, necessary conversations with Craig and Samantha, clearing the air and establishing new professional boundaries. I thought of the late-night discussions with David, excavating the roots of his behavior, confronting difficult truths about our marriage that predated the incident with Sophia. Not excusing his choices, but contextualizing them, understanding them as symptoms of deeper issues we'd both been unwilling to address. And I thought of my own growth through this process, the strength I'd discovered in myself, the clarity I'd gained about my needs and boundaries, the deeper understanding of what love meant not as an idealized concept, but as a daily practice of choice and recommitment. When David returned to the kitchen, now in casual clothes, he moved beside me at the counter, picking up a knife to help with the remaining vegetables. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing my contemplative mood. I nodded, offering a small but sincere smile. "Just thinking about how far we've come." He paused, the knife hovering over a bell pepper. "Any regrets? About giving us another chance?" The question was asked without defensiveness, with genuine openness to whatever answer I might give, another sign of how our communication had evolved. "No," I said after a moment's consideration. It hasn't been easy, and there are still days when I struggle. But no, I don't regret it. Relief softened his features. I think about it every day, he admitted quietly. How close I came to losing everything that matters. How differently things might have turned out if you hadn't seen that text, if you hadn't had the courage to confront me, to demand better. I think about that too, I acknowledged. But I try not to dwell on what-ifs. We're here now, doing the work, moving forward together. That's what matters. He nodded, resuming his chopping. One day at a time. One day at a time, I agreed. As we worked side by side, the children's chatter creating a backdrop of normalcy, I felt a deep sense of peace. Not the unquestioning security of before, but something more grounded, more real. Our marriage had been tested, nearly broken beyond repair, but in that breaking, something new had emerged. A relationship built not on assumptions or idealized notions of love, but on conscious choice, deliberate communication, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from confronting painful truths. The path forward would never be perfect. The memory of that illuminated phone screen. Miss you already, baby. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next week. Would always be part of our story, but it would not be the defining chapter, merely one difficult passage in a longer narrative of growth, forgiveness, and the complex, challenging, worthwhile journey of choosing love day after day, even when, especially when, that choice is hardest to make. As David's hand brushed mine, a casual touch that now carried renewed meaning, I found myself grateful, not for the pain we'd endured, but for the strength we'd discovered, the deeper connection we'd forged through the process of healing what had been broken. Our vow renewal had not been the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, as we'd imagined that day. Instead, it had been the catalyst for a complete reimagining of our marriage, a painful but necessary transformation that had ultimately led us not back to where we'd been, but forward to somewhere new, somewhere more authentic, more conscious, more deeply rooted in the reality of who we were, both as individuals and as partners in this shared journey called life. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.